Have you ever witnessed a single question unravel an entire room, leaving even the most seasoned leaders stunned? Picture this: an 8-year-old girl named Lucy, standing in the middle of a crowded town hall, clutching her grandmother's Bible as if it held the key to the universe. She raises her voice, not with fear but with purpose, and asks two of the most influential figures in American politics, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, what God means to them. What happened next? Let's just say it left everyone questioning their beliefs and their leaders. But here's the twist. The answers couldn't have been more different. On one side, a response so detached it left the crowd uneasy, questioning whether faith had any place in public discourse. On the other, a heartfelt reflection that turned the event into an emotional exploration of loss, hope, and redemption. What does this stark contrast tell us about leadership, vulnerability, and the power of faith in a divided world? This isn't just another political moment. It's a story about compassion, care, and the emotional depth that emerges when we dare to ask the hard questions. Lucy's courage didn't just challenge two leaders, it challenged everyone in that room, and perhaps it will challenge you too. Ready to find out what was said and why it moved an entire crowd to tears? In the heart of a bustling town hall, 8-year-old Lucy stood out not for her size, but for the quiet confidence she exuded. Clutching a weathered Bible passed down from her late grandmother, she embodied a curiosity that transcended her years. The audience, captivated by the political discourse of the evening, hardly noticed her at first, but Lucy's gaze never wavered. Her small frame belied the courage it took to confront two of the most prominent figures in American politics with a question rooted in vulnerability and faith. As Kamala Harris and Donald Trump addressed policy, promises, and power, Lucy's mind was elsewhere. Her question wasn't about economics or education. It was about something deeper, something timeless. Her mother's whispered encouragement earlier that evening echoed in her mind, a gentle reminder of the significance of what she was about to do. Lucy had rehearsed the words over and over, feeling the weight of their importance. Now it was time. When the moment came, the room seemed to hold its breath. Lucy's voice, though soft, carried an emotional weight that silenced the murmurs of the crowd. "What does God mean to you?" she asked, her tone both earnest and unshakable. The question cut through the noise of politics and rhetoric, grounding the room in something profoundly human. The air grew thick with anticipation as all eyes turned to the stage. Kamala Harris was the first to respond. Her face revealed a flicker of surprise, though she quickly masked it with a practiced smile. For Lucy, the question wasn't just a query. It was an invitation to connect, to share something real. But the atmosphere was tense. The audience sensed this was no ordinary political moment. It was as though Lucy had struck a chord no one dared to touch, revealing a layer of compassion and vulnerability often missing in such settings. As Harris began her response, Lucy's grip on her Bible tightened. She wasn't seeking validation. She was seeking truth. The crowd, a blend of curiosity and skepticism, leaned in, eager to hear how the question would unfold. Some exchanged glances, their faces a mix of intrigue and apprehension. This wasn't just a question for two leaders. It was a mirror held up to the room, reflecting what everyone else wondered but hadn't dared to ask. Lucy's presence, though small, was magnetic. She reminded those present of the simplicity and depth that often get lost in life's chaos. Her question wasn't just for Harris and Trump. It was for everyone grappling with what they believed and why. In a world so often divided by ideology, Lucy's earnestness felt like a bridge, a call to focus on what unites rather than what divides. As the night unfolded, Lucy's question became more than just words. It was a challenge, a reminder of the importance of compassion, the courage it takes to ask, and the emotional stories that shape us. The room buzzed with an energy that felt almost sacred, as if Lucy had managed to pause time just long enough for everyone to reconsider what truly mattered. Yet, the story was just beginning. Harris's response would set the stage for what came next, a striking contrast that would leave the audience questioning not just their leaders, but themselves. The room remained silent as Kamala Harris took a moment to compose her response. Her expression was calm, yet her tone carried a subtle edge, betraying a detachment that many in the crowd found unsettling. "Faith," she began, her voice measured, "is deeply personal. But in politics, it's not always relevant." The words hung in the air, carefully chosen yet undeniably cold, leaving Lucy staring up at her with wide, questioning eyes. Harris continued, her polished demeanor intact, but her words felt distant. "We live in a nation built on diversity of thought," she said, avoiding the emotional depth of Lucy's question. The response was clinical, almost rehearsed, as though she were deflecting rather than engaging. For the Christians in the audience, her answer seemed to diminish the significance of faith, brushing it aside as a personal matter that didn't belong in public discourse. Lucy's small hands gripped her Bible tighter as Harris spoke. The child's innocence stood in stark contrast to the calculated precision of Harris's words. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Harris's response didn't feel like an invitation to connect, but rather a reminder of the walls that separate politics from personal belief. Compassion seemed absent, replaced by a distant professionalism that many found hard to relate to. The crowd's reaction was a mixture of polite applause and uneasy murmurs. While Harris maintained her poise, the emotional story unfolding in the room seemed lost on her. Lucy's question wasn't just about politics. It was a plea for care, for understanding, for vulnerability. But Harris's response felt devoid of those elements, leaving a palpable void in the room. Some audience members exchanged glances, their faces reflecting quiet disappointment. For a moment, the warmth and humanity of Lucy's question seemed overshadowed by the cold pragmatism of Harris's reply. The divide between leader and listener widened, as Harris appeared more focused on maintaining political neutrality than addressing the heart of the matter. Lucy, though young, sensed the weight of what had just transpired. Harris's words hadn't answered her question. They had sidestepped it. The Bible in Lucy's hands, a symbol of inspiration and connection, seemed out of place in the sterile response Harris offered. The atmosphere grew heavy, as though the room itself understood what had been left unsaid. Yet, in the discomfort, there was also a glimmer of anticipation. The crowd turned their attention to Trump, whose demeanor had shifted. If Harris's response left something to be desired, Trump now had the opportunity to fill the emotional void. The audience leaned in, their curiosity rekindled. What would he say to Lucy? Would he embrace the vulnerability she had so bravely shared? The stage was set, and the spotlight turned to Trump. His expression softened as he looked at Lucy, as if recognizing the significance of her question in a way Harris hadn't. The tension in the room gave way to a new kind of energy, one that hinted at the possibility of connection, compassion, and a story waiting to unfold. As the tension lingered in the room, all eyes turned to Donald Trump. His usual commanding presence softened as he stepped forward, gazing at Lucy with an expression rarely seen in the political arena. The small girl's question seemed to strip away the layers of his public persona, revealing a raw vulnerability. "What does God mean to me?" he repeated, his voice low and contemplative, as if the weight of her words demanded more than a quick response. Trump paused, his gaze shifting from Lucy to the Bible in her hands. The silence was profound, not uncomfortable but filled with expectation. "When I was your age," he began, his tone unusually tender, "I didn't have all the answers either." He spoke of his childhood, of sitting in church pews and wondering if God was listening. His words carried the texture of someone who had wrestled with faith, not as a concept but as a living, breathing struggle. He continued, sharing an emotional story about his brother Fred, whose life and struggles had profoundly shaped Trump's understanding of faith. "Fred taught me something I didn't understand at the time," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Faith isn't about always feeling strong. It's about believing in something greater, even when you feel broken." His words resonated deeply, touching on the vulnerability many in the room silently carried. Lucy's grip on her Bible loosened slightly as Trump's words sank in. He wasn't just addressing her question. He was speaking to every person who had ever felt doubt or despair. "God to me," he continued, "is hope. He's the reminder that even when we fall, even when we feel like giving up, there's a purpose for us." We're here for more than just ourselves. The crowd listened intently, many visibly moved by his candor. Trump's answer was not polished or rehearsed. It was deeply personal. It carried the weight of someone who had lived through moments of doubt and found a way forward. He spoke not as a politician, but as a man sharing his heart. The room, which had felt fractured moments earlier, began to shift. There was an unspoken sense of connection, a collective understanding of the power of faith to inspire and heal. Lucy's eyes glistened under the stage lights, her small frame seeming less fragile and more luminous. Trump's answer had given her something she hadn't expected, an emotional story that mirrored the weight of her question. Around the room, heads nodded in quiet agreement, and a few hands reached for tissues. Compassion had returned to the space, carried by Trump's willingness to be vulnerable. As he concluded, Trump turned his attention back to Lucy. "You know," he said, his voice gentle, "your question reminded me of something my father used to say. Faith is like a ladder. You climb one step at a time, even when it feels shaky, because you know there's something worth reaching for at the top." The analogy landed softly, its simplicity striking a chord with both the young girl and the adults in the audience. But Trump wasn't finished. His words hinted at something more profound, as though the story he shared was just the beginning. The room, now captivated, awaited what would come next. Trump's heartfelt answer had shifted the atmosphere entirely, paving the way for Lucy's question to evolve into something far greater, a catalyst for reflection, connection, and inspiration. As Lucy stood there, her small hands cradling the worn Bible, she became more than just a child with a question. She was a symbol, a gentle reminder of the purity and courage that often get lost in the whirlwind of adult life. The old, leather-bound Bible she carried, its pages softened by years of her grandmother's devotion, spoke volumes without saying a word. It wasn't just a book. It was a legacy, a connection to a faith that had weathered generations. The audience, initially focused on the political figures before them, began to shift their attention to Lucy. Her presence was magnetic, her question disarming. She represented a spiritual curiosity that many adults had forgotten or avoided. In a room filled with seasoned voters, skeptics, and firm believers, this 8-year-old had managed to cut through the noise and remind everyone of the simplicity of seeking something greater. Her grandmother's Bible, now a centerpiece of the evening, seemed to radiate a quiet strength. It was more than an object. It was a testimony of faith passed down through love and care. Lucy's choice to carry it wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate act of vulnerability, a way of saying that her question wasn't just hers but a continuation of a deeper story. The crowd couldn't help but reflect on their own spiritual journeys, or lack thereof. Lucy's courage rippled through the audience, inspiring them to consider their beliefs with fresh eyes. The emotional story she had drawn out of Trump and the discomfort she elicited from Harris were no longer just about politics. They were about connection, about what it means to care deeply for something intangible yet profoundly important. Lucy's small frame had become a mirror, reflecting the room's collective vulnerabilities. Even those who had come for a purely political evening felt a shift. Lucy's question, her Bible, and her sincerity had transformed the gathering into something far more personal. It wasn't just about policies or debates. It was about the universal desire for meaning and inspiration. Lucy had reminded everyone of the quiet power that lies in asking the right question at the right time. The room seemed to breathe differently now, as though Lucy had opened a door no one had realized was closed. The weight of her question, the care she had taken in asking it, and the vulnerability it required were contagious. People began to murmur softly, exchanging glances, as if acknowledging the unspoken truths Lucy had unearthed. And yet, Lucy herself seemed unaware of the magnitude of what she had done. To her, it was just a question, one she had practiced, one she needed an answer to. But to the crowd, she was a reminder of something they had long ignored: the power of faith to connect, to inspire, and to challenge. Lucy, with her Bible and her earnestness, had become the quiet hero of the evening. The stage was set for what would come next. The room, now alive with introspection, began to feel like more than a town hall. It became a space where people could reflect not just on faith, but on the shared humanity that binds them. The journey Lucy had begun wasn't over, and the audience was eager to see where it would lead. The atmosphere in the room had shifted entirely. What began as a political gathering now felt more like a shared moment of humanity, a space where faith and vulnerability intertwined. Lucy's question had transcended its original purpose, sparking connections that bridged differences. It wasn't just about religion or politics anymore. It was about the shared struggles and hopes that make us human. The audience, a mosaic of backgrounds, began to see themselves in Lucy's courage. Her question served as a reminder that, beneath the layers of opinion and ideology, everyone carries a longing for meaning. Trump's heartfelt answer had resonated deeply, touching parts of the crowd that politics rarely reached. Even those who initially dismissed the evening as routine now found themselves leaning into the conversation. Compassion filled the room as individuals reflected on their own journeys. For some, Lucy's bravery brought memories of times they had sought inspiration but lacked the words to ask. For others, her simple act of vulnerability felt like a call to action, a reminder that caring enough to ask the hard questions can unite even the most divided hearts. The political divide seemed to fade, replaced by a collective sense of wonder. The emotional story Trump had shared became a thread that connected everyone present. His words about loss and faith mirrored struggles many had faced, creating a bond that was unexpected yet undeniable. It was no longer about agreeing or disagreeing. It was about understanding that everyone in the room had a piece of Lucy's question within them. The sense of connection grew with every passing moment. Even Kamala Harris's earlier response, though divisive, added to the evening's significance. It highlighted the contrast between detachment and authenticity, prompting the audience to grapple with their own beliefs about leadership and faith. Lucy's question had drawn a line between those who answered with care and those who avoided vulnerability, making the stakes of the conversation feel personal for everyone. As the dialogue deepened, the room became more than a venue. It was a sanctuary for reflection, where differences faded and shared humanity took center stage. People began to exchange knowing glances, smiles, and even quiet words with those around them. Strangers who might have ignored one another outside were now bound by the invisible thread Lucy had woven with her question. The Bible in Lucy's hand seemed almost luminous now, a symbol not just of faith but of courage and connection. Her small act of asking had become a catalyst for something much larger. The room buzzed with an energy that was both calming and invigorating, a collective realization that even in the midst of division, moments of unity could still emerge. And yet, the journey wasn't over. The evening had taken an unexpected turn, but it wasn't finished unraveling its lessons. As the crowd looked to Lucy and the leaders before them, a sense of anticipation lingered. What had started as a question had grown into a movement, one that demanded to be explored further. The room, once filled with the steady hum of political debate, had transformed into something entirely different. Lucy's simple question had sparked a wave of introspection, and now, one by one, members of the audience began to share their own stories. An elderly widow, her voice trembling but resolute, stood and spoke about the pain of losing her husband and the struggle to hold on to her faith. Her vulnerability created a ripple effect, drawing out the unspoken fears and doubts of those around her. Others followed, recounting tales of hardship and hope. A young father talked about praying for guidance as he worked tirelessly to provide for his family. A teacher shared how she often looked to faith for strength when her students faced challenges she couldn't solve. Each story added a layer to the evening's emotional tapestry, weaving together voices that might otherwise have remained unheard. Lucy stood quietly at the center of it all, her presence a constant reminder of how one question could inspire so much care and compassion. Her Bible, once a personal relic, now seemed like a shared symbol of resilience and connection. The child who had started the evening seeking answers was now helping an entire room rediscover their faith, or at least their willingness to search for it. Trump watched intently, his earlier words resonating anew as he listened to the audience. The emotional story he shared about his brother Fred seemed to echo in the room, connecting deeply with those who had opened up about their own losses. It was clear that his vulnerability had set the tone, giving others permission to confront their own doubts and fears. Even those who had remained quiet felt the weight of the moment. The dialogue wasn't just about faith. It was about the shared experience of being human, of facing struggles and finding ways to keep going. Kamala Harris, though silent now, observed the scene with an expression that hinted at reflection. The energy in the room was undeniable, a testament to the power of shared vulnerability. Compassion flowed freely as the evening unfolded, breaking down barriers and reminding everyone of the strength found in community. The audience, once divided by political ideologies, now seemed unified by something far more profound: the courage it takes to care and the inspiration that comes from seeing others do the same. Lucy's question had awakened something that couldn't easily be put back to sleep. The crowd, each person with their own struggles and doubts, began to see their lives through a new lens. It wasn't about having all the answers, but about being willing to ask the questions that mattered. The sense of unity was almost tangible, as though the room itself was breathing a collective sigh of relief. As the evening drew closer to its end, the atmosphere remained charged with possibility. The stories shared, the connections made, and the hope rediscovered created an unforgettable experience. But there was still more to explore, more to uncover. The collective awakening was only the beginning, and the room seemed ready to take the next step in this unexpected journey of faith and humanity. So, what about you? When was the last time you truly reflected on what faith means in your life? Lucy's simple question didn't just challenge two powerful leaders. It sparked a deeper conversation about belief, vulnerability, and the connections that bind us all. Are you willing to ask yourself the same question she posed? What does God, or purpose, or hope mean to you, especially in the moments when life feels uncertain? Imagine how your life could change if you embraced vulnerability, asked the hard questions, and allowed yourself to be inspired by the courage of others. Could this be the moment where you, too, rediscover what truly matters? Don't let this opportunity pass. Start reflecting, start asking, and most importantly, start connecting. If this story moved you or gave you something to think about, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to continue exploring powerful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Together, we can dive deeper into the moments that challenge, inspire, and bring us closer to the truth.